Hello, Smart Social Podcast listeners, Facebook Live viewers, and YouTube viewers. My name is Josh Oakes. I'm the author of a few books that teach the kids how to shine online, Light, Bright, and Polite for parents and professionals, really showing people that you can put your best foot forward on the internet and that the internet is a good thing. There's a lot of positives. It's like a sharp knife. It can help you cook great things, but it can also, unfortunately, sometimes be a bad thing. So today I have some really awesome experts here with me. And the topic today is perhaps one of the most important topics that we can talk about. It's bullying. And today I have two awesome experts that are going to talk about tips and myths, which is probably my new favorite thing. Myths and tips that you can use to keep your kids safe online. We all know that we've grown up without devices and bullying has been more in person. Today, we're going to talk about the digital side effects of bullying and what you can do. We're going to start first. We're going to go to Tampa, Florida, where we have Brian Taylor. And Brian is an expert with Vector Solutions, and they work with a lot of educators on making sure that bullying doesn't happen, and they talk with them about it. Brian, you've got 4 myths and I want to just get to 2, and then I want to go over to Dr. John Mayer, who's coming at us from another city. I want to just go to 2 myths. What are the top 2 myths? Your first one, you said that telling someone is bad. First of all, welcome to the podcast. Number 2, talk to us about the top 2 myths.
Yeah, thanks a bunch. I mean, a lot of us, it depends on, how and where you're raised, but too many people have been conditioned to the fact that if they report something, they're being a snitch or they're tattling. That's really flawed thinking. With bullying, it's evidentially based that to really resolve the problem, it's really important that people know. So it really, where the myth might have been telling on someone is bad, in this instance, telling on someone is actually part of the problem resolution. So that would be myth number 1. Another important myth, Josh, is that bullying is only physical. Mm-hmm. Bullying takes a lot of different forms, and in this age of social media, I mean, again, super impressed with what your podcast is doing for kids of all ages, but helping them to understand that the social and emotional effects of bullying can be just as traumatizing, if not more so than physical bullying, especially with certainly boys and girls, but especially with girls, social and emotional bullying is particularly devastating.
Yeah, those are 2 great myths. We're going to come back to you, Brian, here in just a sec and get to your other 2 myths. Now we're over to Chicago, Illinois. Dr. John Mayer, who's not here with his guitar, but he is today here as somebody that's been talking to people for 25 years on this topic. Before it was ever a thing, Dr. Mayer here has been really talking to people. Dr. Mayer, first of all, welcome to the podcast. And number 2, give me 2 of your myths. You talk a lot about everyone knows you need to stand up to it. You heard something on the radio. Tell us what that is and tell us why it's wrong, please.
Well, I'm driving in the car literally this last couple of days, after I signed up to be on this podcast, and there's a car dealer commercial that starts out with, everybody knows you have to stand up to the bully. Wrong, And I can't underscore what Brian said wholeheartedly. You're not a narc. You're not a tattletale if you tell somebody, which is, the best thing to do. It's not about standing up or saying a smarter aleck thing than the other guy did or the other girl did or punch somebody or push somebody. It's about telling an adult who's in charge and also ignoring. You can't feed into the bully's actions.
Yeah, and then your second myth, there's something wrong with me, some parents say. And those of you listening on the podcast right now, the I heard thing that I love to share with you is really because you could be out and about and you could hear from another parent. I heard that this is how you need to deal with it. Or I heard if I tell the principal, they open up something with the police department. And that's why we have these experts to talk with you about the truth behind it. So, doctor, is there something wrong with me if somebody's bullying me?
Josh, no. And that's the huge message we have to get to kids that are victims of bullying. It's not you. There's something wrong with that other person. And again, it goes back to what Brian was saying, by telling an adult, by telling someone in charge, you're helping that person. you're helping them do something better, to be a better friend, to be better with social skills. That's what it's about. It's not about there's something wrong with you. It's about that something is not going right in that other person's life. That's why they have to do it.
Yeah, that's very valid. All right, back over to Brian. Hey, Brian, you talk about another myth that people hear that I heard. I heard that if I ignore it, it'll get better. And then also bullying is only physical. Talk to us about those two things.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, ignoring the problem, it's a nature of human tendencies to just want to ignore something and hope that it goes away. And I think especially with kids, it's a bit more of a common problem, but the reality is bullying situations tend to get worse. And so by acting on the concerns and telling an adult, that's the constructive way to address it. Like the ostrich putting its head in the sand, it doesn't make it better. So you really need to tell an adult. The other thing is I would suggest is do more than just tell an adult. I like to be independent of my parents. I certainly did when I was a kid, but letting the parent know as well. Just because you tell one adult doesn't guarantee that she or he will do the right thing. Sometimes they forget, sometimes they ignore it. So I think it's important to, tell a parent and as well as an adult, and be that a teacher, a principal, a guidance counselor, a school nurse if your school has them. But don't stop there. You certainly want to get a sense that action is being taken. And so that's that. Now, bullying, as I mentioned, it's not only physical, but it can be social emotional. It can be sexual. There are lots of types of bullying. And of course, cyberbullying is really just ever present and a really, really big risk for students online. There are all kinds of cyberbullying. Roasting is the most common form. There are sites that have really sort of almost seemed dedicated to that. But the reality is, in a culture, even online, you really got to, if you have a sense that you're being bullied, and Josh, if you don't mind, I'm going to just take a quick second to just explain what bullying is.
I love that, please.
Yeah, there are three conditions that make bullying. And one is harm being done? Two, is there an unfair match? And three, is it being repeated? Well, in cyberbullying, now all forms of school violence, violence against any student are bad, but when it's being repeated, it's particularly devastating, and that's a key criterion of bullying.
Yeah.
What happens in cyberbullying is it gets repeated really fast with a wide circle of folks, and it can be really damaging to an affected student.
Yeah. And with online stuff, that anxiety that is created from that repetitiveness, boy, it'll kill you. I mean, it really can hurt. And I'm too sensitive of a person. I learned that when I ran for politics. And thank God I didn't win, because it hurts. Okay. We're back over to Dr. John Mayer, Chicago, Illinois. You have one more myth before we jump into our tips, before we jump into the way that we help parents and educators to be smart on social media. You say adults in my community might not care, and that's how some kids think. Can you talk to us about that myth?
Yes. First, I got to say that it's great to be on a panel when you're so in sync with the other panelists, because I couldn't agree more with what Brian is saying, and so I hope all the parents are listening very specifically to what Brian is saying. One of the things I wanted, Brian, you mentioned, the different people in kids' lives, and don't neglect coaches and tutors. And when you're in an extracurricular, we need to inform our kids. Those adults need to know about what's happening as well. And I also want to underscore, absolutely always tell your parents. Always let your parents know.
Yeah.
But, back to this myth, Josh, is that, again, we're here on these kind of media messages to let everybody know in communities how to deal with it. So we want kids to know that they can go to adults, and adults are not going to dismiss their concerns like 25 plus years ago when I first started to speak publicly around the nation about this. that was a different era, which I encountered a lot of people going, oh, that's not a problem. That's just little kid stuff. It's very serious. Like Brian is talking about, that this hurts people. And so we need to have our kids know that the adults in our community will care, will take action, will do something. Which leads me to another underline I want to make to Brian's comments. One of the problems with cyberbullying is that it's much more difficult to identify the source of the bullying on cyberbullying. Whereas in person, at school, and clubs, and sports, more readily we can identify, oh, that young person is picking on another person. But in cyberbullying, the source is often unknown, especially as these things build and repeat. Yeah. And the repetitive nature is something that Brian brought out, which is absolutely spot on. And not isolated incidents.
Yeah, sorry for the interruption. Those of you that are listening, those of you parents, we all know, and part of the thing that we do here at Smart Social is look at all the anonymous apps. And this is just going to be a gentle reminder. On smartsocial.com, there is a popular app guide that has been shared 8,400 times or whatever, and it talks about the green zone, which is tied to your real identity. These are the apps where if bullying happens, there's a real face and a name. And then there's the gray zone where your kids want to hang out and there can be positive family time there. That's where Snapchat exists, and your kids want to play, but then you need to have a talk with them about it and be where your kids are at. Dialogue. This is what these two experts are talking about a lot. Then there's the red zone, and this is where bullying is prevalent and it is anonymous, which will eat your child up on the inside. This is where people can say very bad things. The number one app right now on the App Store is the Sarah app. If you have to go watch that app guide, we made a 3-minute video that teaches you why it's so popular, and B, it is anonymous, and kids think, oh, maybe I'll get more positive feedback if I use this app to get anonymous feedback in this chat bot, and I don't know who it came from. And it ends up hurting them on the inside, right? And it could be repetitive. It could be a one-time. It could anyways, they don't have people to talk to. So just a side note, a PSA, we spent years building this red zone app guide. Go learn what those red zone apps are. Learn how bullying can get access to your kids through these apps. And it perhaps, and I want to hear from you guys. I'm going to we're going to dive into your tips here in a sec. What are some of your tips on anonymous bullying? I know this is a little bit of a kind of a left-wing hook, but if some student is getting anonymously bullied through some apps, what are your tips to the kids? Brian, we're going to talk to you first about that. What are some of your tips? What should students do, or how can parents look out for anonymous bullying?
Yeah, it's a really great question, a really relevant question given, these apps, and just thank goodness you guys are doing what you're doing. But one of the things students can do is watch out for other students. Frankly, one of the most effective means of bullying is bystander intervention. Kids, especially in anonymous environments, don't stand up for themselves. It doesn't mean you necessarily stand up for them in the online forum, but again, let parents know about it, because it can escalate in ways that are very damaging to the affected students. So I would say just because it's online and just because it's anonymous doesn't mean you can't talk about it. You can intervene in constructive ways. In fact, you can intervene and still remain anonymous yourself. Most state laws protect the anonymity of a student looking out for another student.
Yeah.
So that can be super effective.
That's a really good tip. Hey, doctor, I want to jump over to one of your tips. You talk with students, you say one of your tips is, hey, that bully is going through a lot. They have a lot of stress and pressures on their life. Can you talk to us about a way that, what you mean by that?
Yeah, and it really, again, it's so compatible with what Brian was just saying here, is that when we tell an adult what's going on, it's a form of helping. And we get this bystander phenomena because kids don't want to get involved. They don't want to have repercussions. They don't want to hurt somebody's feeling. But we got to get the message to kids that this is about helping someone in your community that's struggling through something. So and one thing I want to emphasize, Josh, about that, tip I said about there's something going on. That doesn't mean if your child is a bully and you discover it, let's put that on the table. That doesn't mean that your child is going to be a serial killer when they grow up or some kind of criminal or anything. It's just that at this point in their life, they have maladaptive socialization.
Mm-hmm.
Where it came from, there could be many, many sources. But as a parent, you said it at the beginning of this podcast, don't bury your head in the sand like an ostrich and not accept the fact that my kid is bullying some other kids. And you can help them at that time. And gets at that anonymous cyberbullying as well. These kids that are bullying are not necessarily nuclear rocket science. And so if you tell an adult, sometimes I'm in schools every day as a consultant, and schools have a marvelous way of looking at some of these social media posts and then going, oh, we know exactly who that is. Yeah. So when you tell an adult there's a way to figure out the source, it's more difficult than catching it live, but boom, we're on top of it.
Yeah, schools do. It's really easy. When I travel to schools and speak to students, there are actually students that'll bully me. I'm teaching them how to get into their dream school. They'll actually make a fake site for me. And then one of the secrets, parents and counselors, you can see all the followers of that fake account that makes fun of Josh Oakes. And you can see all those followers in their bio. It says the school name and what year they're graduating. You're like, are you kidding me? So it's typically one of those kids or 30 of them are giving it away. It's hilarious. Yeah. So anyways, schools are inviting me back, and yet kids are bullying me from that school. So the administrators loved me, but the kids are making fun of me. It's hilarious. All right, Brian. So doctor, that was really a great tip. Brian, we're back over to you. You talk a little bit about being age appropriate and then share experiences with teachers. Can you talk to us about those two tips?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a parent, and whether you're a parent or a teacher, but especially if you're a parent, I think you really want to just think about informing your student in age-appropriate ways. I mean, the younger the student, there can be too much of an information download. It's important to be balanced as you talk about the problem of bullying, but don't be alarmist either. It's a tightrope to walk. You don't want to understate, but you don't want to alarm and terrify. But I think always share a bullying concern with the teacher or principal. Again, I think you just want to remind students that it's okay to say, it's okay to speak up. In fact, it's very important that they do so. I can't underscore enough. And again, I just echo what Dr. Mayer was saying. It really is talking it up, and that runs quite differently than the way many of us have been led to believe we should behave.
Yeah, that's very wise. I like that. Okay, Dr. John Mayer, back over to you. The bully, you said earlier, is maladjusted to social pressures and social, and you said also the bully has no idea how to relate to others, and it might be picked up from other people. Any tips that you have for parents and educators on how to make sure that they can see these signs early on, so that if there's a student that might be picking up bullying from their parents or somebody else, that they won't pass it on?
Well, a lot, Josh. First of all, parents, and as Brian and I have also talked about here, teachers, schools need to look inside themselves. How are we presenting ourselves as adults? Kids, we can talk about peer pressure all you want, but kids are still looking at us adults wide-eyed as to how we're supposed to, behave and be as an adult. Therefore, they look at us as models. So first of all, look at yourself and look how you're presenting yourself, because those wide eyes are looking at you. Second thing is, in regard to how we are going to then interface with the person who is doing the bullying, don't reinforce behaviors that are along that continuum of being a bully. Yeah. Overly aggressive behaviors. Just because a student, a child is very good at sports, I was an athlete all my life, doesn't mean, that they can run roughshod over somebody else, and don't reinforce that behavior. Mm-hmm. So look at how you're reinforcing the behavior in the bully. And it needs to have consequences when you see it. You need to step in when you see a bully doing these things and give consequences for it. And at the very least, say, stop. We don't socialize that way. We don't form friends this way. We're not going to accept that in this house, in this school, in this sport, in this community.
Very wise. I like that. It starts with the parent, and parents need to listen and look. The Netflix show called, what was the name of the Netflix show that's been talking about counselors a lot
13
lately?
Reasons Why.
13 Reasons Why really has brought light to this. And boy, it's a good thing to bring light to. All right. So we've talked about a lot of tips here. You guys have had some great myths, some tips. I want to pull back from you guys one more time. What are some maybe some frequently asked questions that people ask you all the time, or that you have to clearly, Brian, you just defined bullying as a repetitive nature something, which I think is really interesting. Most people don't think it's repetitive, but it is, and that defines bullying. Dr. John Mayer, do you have any other frequently asked questions that people often are like, well, wait, tell me about this?
Well, the biggest one that I see is that we feel helpless towards this. There's nothing we can do about it. Again, I go back to that. I introduced that phrase a little earlier, peer pressure. Well, nothing I can do. It's the group of kids. There's nothing I can do as a parent, because once they're out of my eyesight, then the peer group takes over. That's a huge myth for parents.
Yeah.
We are still powerful entities in children's lives. Don't ever forget that.
I love that. That's a great tip. Hey, Brian, I'm going to leave you the last word. What tips do you have for parents on how to protect their kids when it comes to bullying?
Yeah, I think we've covered the bases, but I will throw in one thought that's just really important, and I think Dr. Mayer would agree. Every kid is vulnerable to bullying, but clearly certain populations are more at risk than others. Students with disabilities really are much more prone to be bullied than their more enabled peers. And so that's something, again, if you're looking out for friends, look out for those students with disabilities and then LGBT students. Again, certain populations just are more at risk. And so I think for students and parents alike, you just got to see yourself as a member of a community. And it doesn't mean that all bullies are bad. As Dr. Mayer noted, a lot of times it can be indicative of an emotional behavior disorder or something else. The kid needs help. But the first step of resolution is really speaking up and making sure that the target or victim of bullying is protected.
That's really wise. Look out for those around you who might be more susceptible to being bullied. Befriend them. That is really, really wise advice. I want to thank both of you for being on here today. Those of you that are listening right now, watching us live on YouTube, Facebook, or any of the other mediums that we're reaching you on, we at smartsocial.com have a lot of resources, experts like you're seeing right now, the people taking time out of their day to protect you and to share with you. You can learn more at smartsocial.com. One of our biggest initiatives is Parent University, where we provide videos for you to watch with your kids so that you no longer are the bad mom, the bad dad, the bad guy, if you will. Instead, we are showing you, hey, here's a story. And really, I truly believe in telling not the kids what to do, but showing them a story. We have one video that shows you exactly how colleges will someday search for you online. And this gets kids away a little bit, in my humble theory, away from bullying and posting on Snapchat in a bad way, because they go, whoa, there is so much of a bigger world out there. I have to start worrying about my online behaviors. And if I'm over here picking on this person, a college is going to see that. Holy smokes, this is a totally different way to look at it. So this is, it's a $1 to try it out for a week. It's $9 a month at the date of this recording. We give you videos to watch with your kids, and we update them. We have about 20 to 30 videos that are on the docket that we're producing as we speak. And they're 3 to 5 minute videos. You sit down with your kid in the middle of the week, and we become the bad person. But instead of bad person, we show the why, the example, how to get fired, what to do. There's one story from my speeches that teaches kids how to get fired with one tweet. And rather than telling them don't do that, we show them and they go, whoa, are you kidding me? It changed the results and they can't get a job here. And so really we want to share stories with your family, with your community. That's what we call Parent University. You can click the links below to learn more. I'm so thankful to our 2 experts here today. Thank you to both of you for joining us live from all over the country. Those of you that are watching, we'll see you soon at smartsocial.com. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.